Hello, everybody. We are here to talk about the Eternals. Now, before I get too into it, depending on how many of my videos you've watched, there may or may not be some things that you know about me. Number one, I'm a big Marvel fanboy. Number two, I'm not really that big into sci-fi or fantasy. I like superhero things. Number three, my enjoyment of a film is very often quite dependent on my expectation of that film going in. And number four, I didn't love Shang-Chi. So, putting all that out there, big reaction to this movie, the majority reaction that I'm hearing be reported is that it's negative, that people don't like it, right? It's got the lowest Rotten Tomatoes score ever, which doesn't actually really mean anything. I hadn't heard that many actual reactions to it, though. I just heard people reacting to other people's reactions. The only person that I had really heard talk about it was my brother, who saw it a couple days before me, and he said he liked it. So, while there's a lot, things like X-Men Dark Phoenix, or New Mutants, or Fantastic Four that people just absolutely trash, when I go to see them, I typically think, this is not nearly as bad as people say. This is fine. So I end up enjoying it more. But I didn't actually hear people trashing this movie. I just heard people saying, hey, other people apparently don't like this. So I didn't really have much of an expectation that swayed me either way. I was worried that going in, that it might be a little bit too sci-fi, too fantasy for my tastes. And I will say that it's not a traditional superhero story, right? So, like I said, I prefer more straightforward superhero things, which is part of why I didn't enjoy Shang-Chi as much as most people seemed to. I don't think that makes a movie bad if it doesn't have it. It's not my... it's not the kind of thing that I enjoy the most, right? I like superhero stuff, not as much sci-fi and fantasy stuff, but I can enjoy some of those things if they have superhero elements to them. But I don't think Shang-Chi was a superhero movie, and I don't think Eternals was a superhero movie. So, stalling aside, I didn't dislike this movie, but I think there are some pretty big things that could have been done differently that would have made me enjoy it more. And I don't want to get into too much spoilers before I give a warning. So I will just say it looks amazing. I think the cast all did great. The biggest issue for me, in my opinion, is that there's too much content and too many characters and too much scope and too much runtime for one movie. I think this movie would have benefited from being broken up, and I'm going to talk about that here very shortly, but that's my main thought right now at this point in time after just seeing it, is that there's just too much, and there were moments that I was like, this should resonate with me more, this should make me feel more than I'm feeling, but there's just so much else going on that it's not. So I think it's good. I'm curious to see what's coming next in the Eternals pocket franchise within the larger MCU. But I do think that this could have gone over way, way better, at least for me, with some changes. So I will get into that now, but I'm going to go ahead and put up a blanket spoiler warning. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to be spoiled, then thank you for watching this. Goodbye. Moving forward into spoilers, one of the biggest things right off the bat is when you do a movie with this many characters, you've got to make sure the audience can keep track of them. I thought by the end of the movie that this did sorry, I got an itch right here and I keep scratching it and that probably looks really weird. I think by the end the movie did a pretty decent job of showing everybody's powers, but all throughout I was kind of confused on how the powers worked and what the power sets were, and like, okay, they're all strong, but this guy is like the most strong. Gilgamesh, right? That seems to be his power, is more strongness. But Icarus also seems really, really strong. So, and they're all fast, but the one girl is faster. And so it's a little odd. Excuse me. But the other thing for me is the names. And I realize that this is based on a comic book. But, like, it's very hard for me to keep track of the names. And there'll be, like, one name that they'll say. And then I'll be like, okay, try to remember that name. And then I'll think of that for a while. And then I'll forget everybody else's name. And then I'll be like, oh my gosh. And then I'll be like, wait, what was that other guy? And it's just too much to keep track of at once. I realize that's very basic white boy of me. To be like, the names aren't Jack and Craig and Fred. And yeah, part of that is my lack of experience to other stranger names. I'm sorry, not stranger. Other names that are strange to me. But compared to something like X-Men, right? Where they all have code names. The one with weird eyes is Cyclops. The one that controls weather is Storm. The one with claws is Wolverine. The one that turns to ice is Iceman, right? Like, that's so helpful when you are introducing a team, a large amount of people to an audience, to have the name and what they do be connected, right? Because then that's just one thing to remember. And it tells you two things. Whereas here, you have to keep track of what powers they have and their names, which are not connected at all. I guess some of them, like Athena, is supposed to be, the prototype for Athena, the goddess of war, so she uses weapons. But, like, I don't know. And Icarus can fly, like in the legend, but it's just not as simple. I'm a simple brain, apparently, and I like things simpler. Even with things like Guardians of the Galaxy, which have more exotic names, like Gamora and Drax, there's only 5 main characters. So it's easier to keep track of all of them because there's only 5 of them. I couldn't even tell you. I couldn't even tell you right now how many Eternals are in this movie. I could try. Let's see. You've got Icarus, Circe, Sprite, Druig. I don't remember his name. The leader, I can't remember the leader's name. I keep wanting to say like Ajax, but that's the dude from Deadpool. Something with an A that's not Aramesh, because that's the other guy. The fast one, whose name I don't remember. Gilgamesh, the guy who's like Forge from the X-Men. He makes machines, but I don't remember his name either. That's 8. The one that shoots the things, who is the only actor from this that I've seen in anything other than Angelina Jolie. But I can't pronounce his name. That's on me. That's my fault. So that's 9. I can't even remember, did I say Athena or not? I don't think so. Athena makes 10. Is it 10? Are there 10? So I'm going to cheat in this video, since I wasn't able to take notes, and I don't have a second person to bounce off of. I've just got it pulled up on Wikipedia. Circe's, Icarus. Kingo is Camille Nanjiani. Nungiani? I thought it was Nungiani. Nanjiani? Camille Nanjiani. Kingo. Okay, I said him, I just didn't know his name. Sprite. Fastos is the one who's definitely not Forge. Makari is a super speed. I did get Druig right. Okay. Gilgamesh, got him. Ajax. So it's very close to Ajax. But it's just Ajax. And I said Athena. So I think I got them all. That's 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 Eternals, plus the Celestials, plus the Deviants, plus Circe's boyfriend. It's a lot to keep track of. And apparently I did a better job than I thought, but like the whole process of the movie, my brain is working so hard to try to keep all these people straight. It's a lot of extra work to put on. I forget why I started it. I think I was just talking about the problem with teen movies. Here's the big change. Not that I'm Nando v. Movies or anything, but here's the big change that I think would make this property way more solid. Is that this should have been more than one movie. Right? It's so long and there's so much in it. And it not only has to introduce all of these people to us, and it not only has to show us the big main current conflict of the movie, but it also has to show us the history with all of them. But it keeps going back and forth. It doesn't move linearly. So that's disorienting. But also, it requires us to feel that connection that they're supposed to have between each other, so that when we find things out, like Icarus has betrayed them all, it's supposed to feel more intense than it does, because they've been together for thousands of years, and we've been with them for 2 hours, right? So, obviously, we're not going to make movies over a course of thousands of years, but I think if there was one movie that introduced the concept of the Eternals, sent them on their mission, and took them up through whatever it was, Babylon, I think, was the last time they were together. And that ends, right? And then the stinger on the end is them in the modern day, and this big earthquake happening, right? And then it's like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And then you have a whole movie to just be on this conflict. And then if we needed to sprinkle in a couple flashbacks, like about the disease that I can't remember the name of, you can put in the flashbacks that are necessary for narrative resonance, but not for our understanding of the characters. You can put those into the next movie. Captain America: The Winter Soldier did that really well. It put in some flashbacks that helped with the narrative, but we had already established the relationship between Steve and Bucky. And when you do multiple movies spread out over multiple years, that gives the audience time to grow with these characters and to connect with these characters and to think about these characters and to imagine these characters in different scenarios. And then we'll have years of a relationship with them, and then we find out that Icarus has betrayed them. And maybe that's a thing from the comics. So maybe, like, most people, but like, this is not a big comics property. This isn't Spider-Man or even Iron Man or Captain America. I have hundreds of comics, and I've never read an Eternals comic. So yeah, those people that read that, if that comes from the comics, they might not be surprised. But the vast majority of your movie-going audience is probably going to be surprised by that. So I think making this 2 movies, would have made each sitting shorter, which I think 2 hours and 37 minutes is a long movie. But it would have helped us build those relationships with those characters. And then it would have made the betrayal so much more intense. But also it just would have focused the story more between things that happened in the past and things that happen now. And also, like, characters in this movie seem to, unless I misheard or misunderstood, they seem to use centuries and millenniums interchangeably. And they seem to not really keep track that well, because things, and I confirmed looking at the plot summary on here, things have been happening since 5000 BC, which is 7,000 years. But lots of times you'll hear 5,000 years, right? And they ask, how long were you with Icarus, right? 5,000 years. And then, how long have you been apart? 500 years. I don't remember the exact details of what they say, but they say 5,000 a lot, and they say 500 a lot, and they say centuries a lot after talking about thousands of years. And it's such a long time scale that it's confusing to keep referring to things in the past in the present day. And if they had done one movie of past Eternal stuff leading up to this, and then a movie of current Eternal stuff, I think it would make everything a lot more solid in at least my brain. But maybe that's just me. Maybe that's a me problem. I think this is also the first MCU movie with written narration at the beginning, and it seems it seems clear to me that that was done to make sure the audience understands the difference between Celestials, Eternals, and Deviants. And if that's a concern for you, give us a movie for that. Right? Because then what about the kids that can't read that? What about the people that aren't paying attention at the beginning? You know, like, to make so much understanding of your movie dependent on 30 seconds of text at the beginning that people are probably going to forget since your movie's almost 3 hours long. Address that issue better. I feel like I'm being really hard on this movie, and I didn't hate it. I just think I would have connected so much more to it if I had more time to get the characters before the whole thing was done. I'm just scrolling through stuff in the Wikipedia to see if I can catch anything. So, let's talk about the Black Knight. I did not realize that that's who that character was. I wasn't even sure when I left that that's who that character was, but with the post-credit scene, when he opens up a big box that's got a black sword in it, I've read enough comics to know who the Black Knight is and know about the Ebony Blade, although I thought Valkyrie had that. But maybe not. Anyway, so yeah, I left the movie I'm like, is that the Black Knight? Is that who that is? And if so, I hope they get weird with it. I'm pretty sure I've got a blog post somewhere on an old blog that I used to do that I haven't updated in years, talking about how much I would love a Black Knight movie set in medieval times in the MCU. It would be so different. It would be so weird. And I realized I said at the beginning of this video that I'm not that into fantasy stuff, but make it a superhero movie in medieval times. That'd be dope. I realize that's not the same Black Knight. It's an ancestral thing. But if you're giving us some Black Knight, give us a Black Knight movie set in, Arthurian times or something like that. Also, apparently, that's Blade that talks to him at the end. That's what Mr. Sunday Movies tells me anyway. So if you didn't know that, that's interesting. What's Blade doing in London? I know he's British in the comics, but he doesn't talk with an accent in this. Oh my gosh, we got to talk about accents in this. But anyway, that's kind of neat. So let's talk about accents. To be clear, I fully support and I appreciate that this is a multinational cast, a multiracial cast. I don't know if the actress playing I can't remember her name, the running one, the one that's fast, I don't know if she's actually a mute actress or not, but we've got a mute character in the film. We've got a gay character in the film, which I know Disney loves to say every couple movies. This is the first openly gay character in a Disney movie. I'm pretty sure this is the first same-sex kiss that has been featured in the main part of the screen. I think there might have been a couple in a Star Wars movie in the background. At least in Marvel. I know they've had LGBT characters on the shows, but in the movies, I thought, because it looked like they were going for it at one point, and they cut away, and I was like, okay, Marvel, you're trying, but you're not really trying. And then they do it in the next shot. So, hats off. That's somewhat sarcastic, I think companies like to pat themselves on the back for doing very little, but that's noteworthy, I think. So I like how much representation is in this movie. I think that's a good thing. That said, from a story perspective, first of all, why are they all speaking English to each other? Shouldn't they have their own language? Even if they didn't have their own language and they had to learn the language of the people, English would not have been around during their first parts of their mission. Why are they speaking English to each other? Number two, why do they all have different accents? And why do those accents come from places that didn't really exist when they first started speaking with those accents? And I feel like you could have, if you I don't know. This is very, very nitpicky. I'm aware of that. That's just where I'm at right now. You could have done something where each of them was the guardian of some new civilization. And their accent inspired the accent of the people that lived there. That might have been a little strange, but to just not address it, To me, this is worse than characters not speaking Russian in Black Widow, because this is so many different accents. And there, there's interesting things like Kumail Nanjiani's character going and doing Bollywood movies. It's like, obviously in the real world, the actor looks like people from that culture, right? But like, why do the Eternals look like civilizations that hadn't yet existed in their current form? It's just very strange. It seems like they should all look off. I'm not saying they all have to look identical to each other, because that's very closed-minded. They're synthetic beings, right? They shouldn't have to look like each other. But they shouldn't look like what humanity will become in thousands of years. If anything, they should look like what humanity was when they went there, and they don't look like that. So it's just really weird when you try too hard to think about it. And I thought they were going to also gloss over the fact that none of them aged. They do get into it a little bit with Kumail Nanjiani's character, saying that he's pretending to be different generations. But like, at some point, someone's going to notice that you've never seen any of these actors with a kid, and then suddenly one day the one actor is done, and then his son, who looks exactly like him, is like, I think that's pretty hand wavy. And I was ready and set to ask about Sprite, because I was like, if that character always looks like a young adolescent child, that actress is going to age in the real world, so how are they going to explain that? And they do. So 1.5 points out of 3 in terms of the accents and the aging issues. But like I said, that's very nitpicky. I understand it's a movie, and we can only work with what actually exists in the real world. So I'm not that upset about that. It's just fun to complain about. Just scrolling through. I don't know anything about Eros, so that should be interesting. Again, I kind of want to be one of those whiny people that complains that Patton Oswalt already has a role in the MCU, so why is he now playing Pip the Troll? But A, I'm also into this enough that I know that several actors have multiple roles in the MCU, and B, I also know that some people don't like to think that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is canon anymore, which is sad, because that show got really good towards the later seasons. And number 3, it's a voice role, so I can cut that some more slack. Plus, I just like Patton Oswalt, so if we can get him in more stuff, that should be good. DC Comics. Let's talk about DC Comics. I know they referenced Superman in one of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, but that's way long ago. I think this is the first time in the MCU that we reference DC characters. I'm pretty sure Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. referenced Harry Potter, which is Warner Brothers, who owns DC. But we get Batman and Superman name drops in this movie, which is interesting. And then there's something else. I mean, every time they said the word Sprite, I was like, I wonder how Coke feels about that. They probably like it. It's going to bug me now. They mention a company. They talk about Amazon. Kumail Nanjiani is asking, I think he's asking the fast one if she's ever used a Kindle or anything like that. And I'm like, Amazon's your competitor, Disney. Like, why are you name dropping your competition, Warner Brothers and DC Comics and Amazon, in your movie? Just a little strange. I don't know, but I think I've ranted and raved for long enough in this video. So my final closing rant and rave. I think, sadly, Marvel is depending on the Marvel brand and the name recognition and the star power behind this movie to carry this movie until they can expand from it. And I wish that they had really just wanted to tell a solid Eternals saga and understood that means we have to tell this part first, and then we tell this part, and then we can go on to these other things. And it just feels like they try to do too much too soon. But, you know, clearly they're doing more stuff in this universe with these characters. So maybe these things that seem like big deals now are going to seem very insignificant in a couple movies. So maybe I'm just a big whiny baby. But those are my thoughts on the Eternals. Let me know what you thought. You can tell me if you agree with anything that I said or if you think that I'm a big dumb idiot. Let me know down in the comments. But those are my thoughts. Thank you very much for watching and have a good day. Hey everybody, Sam Tom here. Just wanted to let you know that I have 2 channels. If you're watching my music content, I also have a movie channel where I talk about movies and TV shows. If you're watching my movie content, I have a music channel where I do song covers, instrument demos, things like that. So feel free to check that out. Obviously, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that YouTube stuff. Thank you very much for watching and have a good day.